Hey everybody, this is Steve Reed here with Student Athlete and Adult Performance Training, saptstrength.com. And today I'd like to share with you all this nifty app called Coach's Eye that some of you might be familiar with, but we use it quite frequently inside the walls of our training facility to help our athletes and clients out. Just because it allows us to show them another viewpoint so they can learn, anything, be it a sprint progression or a squat or lunge movement a bit better. If they're having a hard time visualizing where their body is in space, we're able to film them and then use this app to show them, where their joints are with respective to each other, and loads of other good stuff goes on. So I thought many of you might be interested in some work we've been doing recently with Conrad, who, as many of you know who read our site, had 2 total knee replacement surgeries just within this past year, and he's 65 years young. And we've been working alongside his doctor and physical therapist to help him through the rehab process and now pretty much the post-rehab process. And he's been making phenomenal progress. And just so we're clear who we're talking about, Conrad is this gentleman, not this guy over here. So just want to make sure we're on the same page. And we've been primarily utilizing deadlift variations, at least with regards to exercises that involve a bit more heavy loading, just because they're going to be a lot more glute and hamstring dominant and therefore a lot more friendly on the knee joint. So as we slowly infuse squat variations and lunge variations into his program with light and moderate loads, he's able to progress on the deadlift a bit faster. Conrad possesses a very strong affinity for picking up heavy things, so we've been doing the best we can to just supply him with plenty of palatable training modalities that can, that are safe and yet satisfy his nearly insatiable craving for all things iron. So here he is doing a deadlift. This was a few weeks ago, and on the bar he's got 265 pounds of bar weight, and then he has 3 chains, 1, 2, 3 at 20 pounds a pop that'll supply a little bit of accommodating resistance as he pulls the bar up. So he's got probably roughly, around actually 275 to 280, maybe there at the bottom, and then as he drives up to the top, he's going to have 325 pounds total at the top of his deadlift. So not too shabby if you ask me. So let's look at this deadlift and see how we might be able to make it even better. Alright, we're good. Yep. Oh, easy. Okay, so at first glance it looks pretty good. His spine is relatively neutral. There's plenty of bar speed. He's not grinding it up too much. But let's look at first maybe one of the not so obvious things we can do to improve this pull. So the first thing I would do is removing this tomfoolery from the equation as Conrad goes to set up for his pull. Chavez here thinks that just because he has a 40-inch vertical jump, he can do whatever he wants as our clients are doing their thing. So finally here he's realizing he should get out of the way so Conrad can focus on what he should be focusing on. So as Conrad goes to initiate the deadlift, the first thing I want us to look at, and this is what we've been working with Conrad on, is he has a bit of a hip hike at the start of the pull. And what I mean by that is his hips actually move up before his shoulders move. So his butt's going to go up into the air that way before his shoulders lift. So you can see as he goes into this pull, right about here, you can see his butt moving up, 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 and just now his shoulders start to move as well. Ideally, you want those shoulders and hips to move right about the same speed. If he gets in the habit of lifting his butt up in the air prematurely, then it's going to place a lot of undue stress on his low back, and then things are just going to get especially funky as he gets into heavier and heavier loads. So we want to try to nip that habit in the bud early. The second thing we've been working on with Conrad is his initial setup stance with his feet. is a little bit wide. With his body type and this being a conventional deadlift, I would actually encourage him to bring in his foot stance a little bit closer together, because you can see his knees are actually collapsed inward. We got a little bit of a valgus collapse there as his knees have nowhere to go but in, as his arms are basically forcing his knees inward. So if we can narrow the stance, that'll allow us to stack our knees right on top of our feet instead of them being inside the feet, as you can see here, and allow the glutes to get a lot more engaged, applying a much larger external rotation force on those femurs, just making the lift stronger, safer, and more efficient in general. So we'll give this one more look in full speed.
Oh, easy.
And then we'll look into deadlift he did just a week or two after this, taking some of our tips in mind and looking at what he's improved, and then maybe a couple things we can still continue to refine with him. Alright, so now here we have Conrad a couple weeks later, after he's been practicing a bit of the tips we provided from the video right before this. And so let's go ahead and watch this in full speed. And here he actually does this for a double. This is 275 of just straight bar weight. We took off the chains. So he goes for a second rep, whereas in the temp before he just did a single. Alright, and first something I might point out is he's actually pulling from a little bit further down. In the prior deadlift attempt, in the first video, he actually had mats, one mat under each plate, so the bar was just about a ½ inch higher on each side, which may not seem like much, but for those of you who deadlift frequently, it can make a big difference. So we actually lowered his bar a little bit just so he could get used to pulling completely from the floor. And so let's take a closer look at those two things we were talking about. One, the hips rising too early, and then second, the feet being a little too wide. So you'll see him load back into that pull, and then again what we're looking for is the hips to move at just about the same time the shoulders move. So here he goes to lift, and you can see them moving at just about the same time, which is excellent. And then he goes in, he resets in his second pull, even probably just a little bit better there. So yeah, he's doing really well with that now. I've been asked before, or all of us at SAPT have been asked before, how do you fix when someone hikes their hips up too early? The low back doing too much of the work, stripper deadlift, whatever you want to call it, and usually it's one of three issues. First, sometimes the person can just be yanking on the bar and just trying to go too fast, and then they just lose control and their low back just does all of the work. Conrad doesn't have too much of a problem with that. In general, he exhibits a lot of control during his pulls. So the two things we've been working on with him are, first of all, loading the hamstrings. So before he pulls, you're going to watch him push his butt back, which he didn't do in the deadlift from the video before. He actually just kind of sat straight down. And by loading those hips back, you can see as he does it right now, he pushes his butt back behind him as he sets his arch. And what that's going to do, if I may steal an analogy from Dan John, is it'll act as if he's loading a bowstring. The top of his bow being the hips right here, and the bottom of the bow being the feet. So as he loads his butt back that way, he's basically tightening the bowstring, which is his hamstring, running down there. So then when he unleashes the arrow, so to speak, or lifts the weight, or uses his butt to drive the weight up and then forward at the top, he's just created a lot more tension so he can apply more force during his deadlift. So just loading those hips back. Again, let's rewind so you can see him do it. He'll load his hips back again. That'll get the hamstrings a little bit, or a lot more engaged rather, to help his low back kind of get out of the equation more than it was before. And then two, with his foot stance, you can see he's narrower in this one, and his knees are now in a much better position with respect to his feet. Now, if you were to look at him from the front, he'd pretty much have a straight line going from from the top of his femur down to the knees, and then down to the feet from there. So He could maybe externally rotate those femurs a little bit more. We can have him widen his hands out just a little bit so his knees have a little bit more room to breathe. The last thing now, if I want to be more picky, is he is looking straight ahead, which might be okay during, say, a competition, max attempt, but in practice, in general, we want to get the whole spine as neutral as we can. So you can see he has a neutral spine from his lumbar spine through his thoracic spine or upper back, but then once he gets to his head, his cervical spine extends up that way. So we want to look down a little bit, just so then we can have virtually a straight line going from his lumbar through his thoracic erectors and then all the way up to his cervical spine. So again, there's a lot of debate in this industry on where to look in the deadlift. I think, during a max attempt, might be okay to look straight ahead, but when we're practicing, we want to be as neutral as we can. So one more time, really nice job, Conrad, and hopefully it can be an encouragement to some of you watching, where if man well into his 60s, just having undergone 2 knee replacements can do this, then you can too. So signing out, hope you all enjoyed.